down the steps.
That might clear that one.
Do you want to hold on to one?
Get you out of the rain as quick as we can.
You okay?
Ooh. I'm attacked by brollies. Wow. Now I'd like to just come in around the walls here. It's cold in here. It's meant to be. And it's cold. I'd be worried if it wasn't cold. Sorry. So I thought one of the other tours would be here and we'd have to stand outside for a while. I just grab this slot when you can, is my theory. Now you're all very welcome. Move all around, we should all fit well enough. Now welcome to the crypt of the great Daniel OConnell, Catholic champion and founder of Glasnevin Cemetery. Now I'm sure you all know a lot about Daniel OConnell already, but just to go over it again, he was born in Kerry to a reasonably well-off Catholic family. Now he had an uncle who was an alleged smuggler who had a good few bob, and he took Daniel OConnell under his wing and decided he'd like to have him educated. Now in those days, because of the penal laws, again, you couldn't get an educated, Catholics couldn't here, so he sent him off to France. Now Daniel OConnell didn't really like France. In fact, he found it quite revolting. You know why? The French Revolution. So they were all revolting. That's why he found them revolting. You got it. No, he didn't. He hated violence. He hated bloodshed, and he had a lifelong hatred of bloodshed and violence. And he always decided that any of his campaigns that he ran and the fight for Irish freedom would only be by peaceful means. So he was trained to be a lawyer, came back to Ireland. He was a fantastic orator, apparently. He had this big booming voice that would carry around. He was a flamboyant, tall, big man, very flamboyant, could boom his voice out. Any paintings you see of him or any sketches, there's a lot of cartoons you'll find on Google and upstairs in the gallery there or something. He has this big mop of curly hair, lovely hair, but in fact he was bald. It was a wig. He was always apparently fixing it, but he was very vain, so he was flamboyant and he was vain, but great character. But anyway, he wanted to represent the poor Catholics of Ireland. He set up the Catholic Association. Then he got himself elected as MP for Clare. So he worked from within Parliament, and he finally, in 1829, he got Catholic emancipation for the people of Ireland. So that is why he became their champion. He became called the Liberator, the Emancipator, so he was just the hero of Ireland at the time. He went on to be the first Catholic Lord Mayor of Dublin. He was very much anti-slavery. He hated slavery. He went to America, he gave lectures in America about it, and much to the consternation of a lot of Irish Americans, because a lot of Irish Americans were slave owners at the time. But he was adamant about slavery, and Frederick Douglass, you may have heard of him, the freed slave, he came over to Ireland and he went around Ireland on a lot of his campaigns and shared a platform with him. He was known as the Black O'Connell. So they were great friends, and O'Connell's thing, as I said, was always there was no need to use force as a means to an end. So his speech that Martin Luther King actually gave, this famous speech, I Have a Dream, he uses the words, he says, "We shall overcome by the force of moral authority alone," which are the very words that Daniel OConnell used. So he's still very famous among people like that. Mahatma Gandhi was a great fan of his, as was Nelson Mandela. So he was a very, very famous man. So he also fought for what we call the repeal of the Union. Now, just briefly, the Union, in 1800, the British closed down the Parliament in Ireland because of the 1798 rebellion, and they moved Parliament to London. It was disastrous for Ireland because now we didn't have direct rule. Nobody in London really cared what was going on over here. And all the people and all the machinery of Parliament moved to London. And Dublin went from being the second country of the empire to being the poorest. So Daniel OConnell was determined to have this reversed, and he set up this repeal campaign. And he used to have huge monster meetings. Now, monster they were. There was hundreds of thousands of people who would go to these meetings all around the country in the open air. Now, I know you're probably saying he might have had a big booming voice, but how could 300,000 people hear him in those days? There was no microphones. But he had a huge team of volunteers, and his word would be passed along the line by other people, you know, in different rows. They would spread the word down. So that's how the people got to hear about it. So it was in the middle 1840s. His health was beginning. His wife had died, and unfortunately, the repeal campaign wasn't going very well. He wasn't getting anywhere. It didn't look like he was going to get repeal of the Union. So he fell ill, and he was advised to go on a holiday. So he decided to go on a pilgrimage to Rome. But he never made it to Rome because he died on his way in a place called Genoa in Italy, which was very sad. But he was in his 70s at the time. So they eventually brought his body home, and he was buried down at the further end of the cemetery. Now, between then and 1861, they set about building a suitable monument to him. So hence we have this huge monument. Now, outside is the round tower. It's the tallest round tower in Ireland. It's based on the old monastic round towers. It's approximately 168 feet high, and it used to have a viewing platform. There were 300 steps up the tower, and it had a viewing platform. You could see the mountains of Mourne. You could see some say you could see Wales on a fine day. I don't know about that. And you could see the Wicklow Hills. I don't think you could see any further, but probably the Dublin Mountains, I'd say. Anyway. But you could see, you can imagine, it was spectacular. And then they built this crypt and the mound all around it. But in 1971, somebody set off a bomb underneath the stairs which were in there. Now, the bomb, luckily, didn't spread out here, so the tomb wasn't damaged, luckily for us. But the walls of the tower are approximately 4 foot thick. So they acted as a kind of a gun barrel, and the bomb went up instead of out. So all the stairs collapsed, and there's a huge crack down the side. Now, at the time, it was 1971, they think that it may have been revenge for the blowing up of Nelson's Pillar 6 years earlier. That was blown up. There was a huge monument in O'Connell Street in Dublin, just for visitors. It was a statue to Admiral Nelson of the British Navy, and that was blown up in 1966 by the IRA. So they think that this was a revenge attack, you know, let's get rid of, they took Nelson, we'll take Daniel O'Connell, you know. But I'm sorry. Sorry about that. But again, it's 1971, just think about it. It's a very dodgy time politically as well. So they decided, no, we won't try and rebuild it. So they fixed the crack and they closed the crypt up. So it was closed. Now, they didn't close one of the windows, so every pigeon in Glasnevin went in closed the top window and landed in there. So when they finally decided to restore the crypt, the first thing they had to do was clear out all the pigeons. You can imagine it was disgusting. So they set about restoring this beautiful crypt. And this crypt was designed in the Celtic Romantic design. And all the patterns are from the Book of Durham. All the intertwinings, the shamrocks, it's beautifully designed. So they found the ink, or the paint that was used originally, and they used the same paint to restore it, they used the same gold leaf. And all Daniel O'Connell's achievements are written all along the wall. And so this panel here, when they came in the 90s to start restoring it, that's what the condition that the crypt was in. So they left it like that so you can compare the work that they've done. Apparently restorers do that kind of thing, I don't know. But so you can compare what it was like in the 1990s to what it is now. They've done a fantastic job. And that's the O'Connell's family crest. And the motto on it is Heal agus Neart, which means sense and strength. So, as I say, all his achievements are around the wall, and also his last wishes, which were my body to Ireland, my soul to heaven, here's the interesting one, and my heart to Rome. So, what happened was, when he died in Genoa, he was with some friends, and they were his last wishes, so they said, well, we have to grant his last wishes, so they took out a knife, and they cut out his heart. So they placed it in a silver box, and they sent it to the Irish College in Rome with a little plaque, you know, here lies the heart of Daniel O'Connell. So it was there for many, many years. So in 1905, the Irish College was moving to new premises, and their old premises were being bought by an Italian bank. So a group of people from Ireland went over to make sure that the heart would be okay and would be moved as well. They couldn't find it. Oh. Yeah. We don't know if did it ever really go there, or somebody steal it? We don't know. So it has never been found, so we don't know what happened to his heart, but I have a theory. Now, what do you think of this? My theory is that Italian bank stole it because they want everybody to know that there is a bank out there that has a little bit of heart. Now, this is Daniel O'Connell's tool. That is black Kilkenny marble. It's freezing cold. Always freezing cold. Yeah. Now, his coffin is underneath. You can see it if you look in the apertures there. See it? His coffin. Now, that's made of Irish oak. And it's lead lined, so his body is preserved in there. Because anybody that
He's full body in there.
dead body that's buried in a vault or in a crypt has to be in a lead lined coffin. That's the law. So nothing seeps.